Australia, champions of Asia. The Young Socceroos have done it. 1-1 after extra time, 5-4 on penalties to claim just Australia's third AFC Asian Cup trophy after the Matildas in 2010 and the Socceroos in 2015. A famous night, or morning as it was for most of us following along. An extraordinary achievement by a group of young Australians who will now set their eyes to Chile in September for the Under-20 World Cup. And why shouldn't they fancy their chances to go on and win it all? What does it signal about the future of Australian football as a whole? And should Stephen Hall's mirror image of Mark Schwarzer in 05 really make us think all that differently about it? Then it's the A-League. We don't have any champions to talk about here, but just perhaps we may have our premiers. Auckland and Adelaide play out another game of the season contender. The Wanderers continue their attractive form line as we start to really worry about Melbourne victory on this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me tonight is Jacob Stevens. Jacob, I know you stayed awake for the whole game as well. As you're saying, the extra time period maybe dragged on a little bit, just given how long it was into the night. But what a fantastic moment. The win on penalties, the nail-biting save, that strong left hand, not quite the Schwarzer's right, but as I said, if you look in a mirror, it kind of works out that way. An exceptional occasion.
Yeah, it was awesome to see, and stayed up watching it. I thought that the 90 minutes, the regular time, that was 90 minutes of really, really awesome football from both sides. I thought both teams were playing exceptionally well. It was really open and transitional, but I think that played to the strengths of both teams, and we saw a lot of really good football on display as well, which is what we've kind of come to expect from this Young Socceroos side, right? Is that they're going to play this entertaining, fluid, attacking form of football, and they came up against a side who was equally matched for that as well. So it was tremendous to watch through the 90 and then into extra time, and it just sort of felt like perhaps it was a bit of an inevitability that it was going to go all the way with the way that things started off in extra time, where all of a sudden the tempo was a lot lower. There were clearly some tired legs out there, some silly mistakes being made from both teams in challenges and things like that, and it just was like I think this one's going all the way. And then even in the penalty shootout, it felt like, are they just going to keep scoring every single one of these? Like, it just felt like nobody was going to miss. And then it was quite funny, actually, because the final penalty taker for Saudi Arabia stepped up, and I saw my phone light up, and it was a message from Will, and it just said, he looks nervous. And I was like, usual goalkeeper pseudo-psychology rubbish. I was like, he's gonna bury this fine. And obviously, it's a pretty weak penalty, and Hall manages to make the save. And I was like, maybe he knows what he's on about here. But no, it was such an awesome moment. And, for me, for somebody from South Australia to see, that three of the penalty takers were South Australian boys, were Adelaide players. Stephen Hall, obviously the goalkeeper, making that save to win it right at the end. It's an awesome moment for South Australian football as much as it is for Australian football as well. And, we've always sort of spoken quite highly about this young crop of players coming through, and, for them to actually finally sort of make some noise, right, and show what they're about and win a big tournament. It's got to be huge for not just their confidence, but, their development moving forwards as well, to know that they can go and beat the best players in the region. And now they've got a chance to go and do it against some of the best young players in the world. So, no, it's absolutely an awesome moment for Australian football, and one that, it'll stick long in the memory.
Yeah, all right. Essay, great. We get it. Christian, Montegan, hello to you as well. I think it was about 2:30 in the morning on the East Coast, where you and I are, by the time the trophy presentation was all wrapped up. So late into the night, but something well worth staying up for. It felt, watching it, like you see that save, see Australia win and lift the trophy. It felt like just a massive moment in the chronology of Australian football.
It was reminiscent of that Mark Schwarzer save when I saw, Stephen Hall, that final fifth penalty, because they're all perfect, right? I mean, up until that moment, it was the 10th penalty, and you're thinking, okay, it's going to go like all the way right to sudden death, 10-all, and we're still going to keep going, given that extra time period where it was really lengthy. And I just think the way Australia were able to compose themselves, and it just showed their maturity, really. And we saw that in the previous game against Japan, right, where coming in as underdogs, obviously, given Japan's pedigree in Asia, we thought, okay, this is probably a bit too much of a challenge for us. But to their credit, it was also the football that displayed, right? And that was the same in the final against Saudis. I thought, overall, I thought Australia were the better footballing side. I thought Saudi did surprise me a bit. But in saying that, the first half, there were quite a few yellow cards and some needless challenges. A couple of bookings, which obviously slowed down the momentum and the play. But no, again, to Australia's credit, I thought they dug in well, especially in the extra time period where I think you alluded to it, Jacob. There were a lot of tired legs, just about managing the game right, trying to, I guess, bring it to penalties. And I think that's what Saudi wanted as well, given they were sort of tiring out as well, and they were thankful for it, right? So in the end, it was just, a great win for Australian football in general. And Jacob touched on it as well, South Australian presence. I think that goes to show, the youth development over there, right? Don't want to make it all about South Australia because that's Jacob's job. But I think it is really great to see how this youth is really now starting to shine through. And hopefully now this is I don't want to say different generation to past ones, because I feel as though we have had talented players coming through the ranks in the past. It's just, for me, it's these decisions going abroad in Europe where I think for a few of these players, it's failed for them, right? And I think if we can make sort of different decisions on that part, better people around you, then hopefully it is a better generation. And then obviously that leads to the Socceroos and having a better team.
I think when we talk about like big moments in like the history of Australian football, right, this will be remembered for a long time. And I get the feeling, and I wrote about this for the website as well, I get the feeling a lot of people are going to point to this trophy as the moment things changed. And of course, that's kind of a ridiculous sentiment, right? Because why should one penalty save dictate like the future of the national team or whatever, right? The success of the Young Socceroos at this tournament was a symptom of all the progress that's been made in the last 10 years rather than the cause of progress going forward, right? But history loves a trophy. And so this will be the moment that people look back on and will use as the marker for everything that follows. And there's some really impressive individual players in this team. Alex Badalatu, one player of the tournament. I thought Paul Ocon-Engstler and Daniel Benny were outstanding as well. Two other standouts for me. Of course, Badalatu coming into this weird situation where he's been loaned from the Wanderers to the Victory after he left for this tournament. So he left the Wanderer and he's going to come back and go to Melbourne. And, you get to see all those clips from like we saw the South Australia boys today. Like, who was it? Tiago Quintal. He didn't fly home to Australia. He went to South Korea to join with his Sydney FC teammates, right? And they're all patting him on the back and giving him hugs and saying, well done. Alex Badalato's then got to walk into a new club. It's got to be awkward, all these new people going, hey, yeah, well done, mate, well done, all good stuff. So interesting for him, but he plays superb. Scored a couple of very important goals, of course. And Trevor Morgan, the coach, has had his moments with youth teams in the past, but the way he got this team playing was absolutely extraordinary. Pretty much what a lot of people are asking for from the senior national teams. So for the under-20s to play like they play was quite exceptional. You mentioned Stephen Hall's name, Jacob, and I think it's worth touching on him again because the story throughout the tournament is a fascinating one. His grandfather passed away during the tournament as it was undergoing. They wore black armbands for him during one of the games. It was clearly a very emotional thing for him. And he came back. He actually had, he was the reason, to be fair, why Saudi Arabia scored their goal in this final. He's just a little bit off his line, caught the ball, it went over. There's a little issue with VAR, but I think it was rightly awarded. So he almost had that moment where he was the enemy, but to come back the way he did and forever now to be etched in the history books like that is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah, and I can't help but feel that perhaps making that mistake served as motivation then in the penalty shootout, right? To be like, I've made the mistake that's brought us here in the first place. So it's like sort of my responsibility to right that and do what I can to help us get the win. And, you saw how much it meant to him afterwards, right? Immediately, kissing the bottom of his glove there where he had a tribute to his grandfather, showing it to the camera and just, it was an awesome moment for him. And I think it was good to see the ability from a young goalkeeper to bounce back from something like that, because we've seen it a lot in the A-League this season with young keepers making mistakes, but we've none of them have really necessarily had that similar sort of opportunity to Stephen Hall to really right that wrong in the same game and win it for them. And it's a fantastic little moment. And you both mentioned the Mark Schwarzer save and the similarities there, and there's something with Australian goalkeepers and penalty shootouts that just, it seems like it's a good match. And I mean, if that's what works, that's what works. And it's always good to know that if it does get to that point, you've got somebody between the sticks who's reliable and who can show up and save it. And it was awesome to see him be able to redeem himself on the goal itself that he did concede. It's just silly, right? Like, it's just a little mistake that you lose your position just ever so slightly, and you're just behind the line, and you grab it, and the ball's over the line. And yeah, I saw a lot of people on social media claiming that the ball hadn't crossed the line, but from everything that I'd seen, it looked like it definitely did. And obviously, no goal line technology either in that game. So, VAR only had limited angles to look at. But silly little mistake that cost the team. But then, able to right that wrong, and he did it brilliantly. So, awesome to see him be able to come back from that so quickly and really stand up when the team needed it. And you could see how much it meant to him.
You know what they needed, right, Christian? They needed Robbie Slater
Robbie
out on the baseline with the ball and the different camera
angles. It's been so long
angles.
since we've referenced that. It's been such a long time.
That is such a relevant reference. Yeah.
What does this say to you, Christian, about the future of the game? But let's stick with the national teams as well here, because as I said, obviously, win or loss, the progress is there regardless, but I guess the trophy is just that extra little bit of signal that gets attention from a wider array of, I guess, footballing people that have got their eyes on this team. For them to be the champions of Asia and now heading off to a World Cup, that says not even just a lot about them, but you got the under-17s just went away, played this international tournament against the likes of Oman, Saudi Arabia, and I'm forgetting the third team as well, but they won that tournament. You got the girls under-20s who just went away and won this Pacific Four Nations tournament as well. I know the under-23s in both sides have had their struggles, but on general terms, the Australian youth team's not doing too bad at the moment.
They have done, and I guess it's that little piece of silverware that's what's missing. It really shines a light on it, doesn't it? Because, for example, if Australia had have lost that final against Saudi Arabia, it would have been like, okay, pat them on the back to say, well done for making the final, but it wouldn't have been, I guess, hyped up as much as what it is now, which is great. Obviously, we don't want to put too much pressure on the players and the youth coming through, but I think it just gives it that extra perspective as to what they've actually achieved. Like, this is a youth tournament that Australia, they've never won something like this before in their history, right? So, in terms of, like, obviously the football they played as well, it really just showcases, their abilities and what they're capable of, right? So, like, even the Andrew Redmayne save for the Socceroos, right, against Peru, like, it's these little saves and little moments that can just change a course of an international scene or club football, whatever it be. Because had Redmayne not saved those penalties, had Australia been eliminated, Graham Arnold's out the door, and we're seeing a different future for the Socceroos, right? If these young Socceroos perform badly at this tournament, then we would have been asking questions. Oh, what's the youth development? What's happening? Why aren't we producing young players? And we've had this narrative time and time again. Now that we've got a trophy to show for it, now at least we can say, hopefully, we are at least on the right track and we are doing something right. Let's acknowledge that and move forward. That's not to say that we don't have problems at grassroots level. Obviously, there is still stuff to sort out in terms of that, but at least now there's sort of a stepping stone to say, okay, at least, we're on the right track. So that's definitely a good sign, at least for Australian football.
All right. I like it. Anything else, guys, before we move on for this? Because, look, one of the other great things is that we're going to get some extra off-season content when they go away to Chile in September, which is going to be nice. I look forward to that. Of course, though, that's probably going to be, well, not probably, but, in terms of the cohort, the actual players that will be there, a lot of the A-League players will be in off-season. That's going to be an interesting dynamic, Jacob, in terms of where does the squad actually come from for that tournament. Yeah.
You don't want to be bringing in players who haven't played for a little while, but on the other hand, if they're your best players, then you kind of feel like you might have to. So it's going to be definitely interesting squad composition. But yeah, I'm just really excited to see how they can do on the world stage now, right? Like, they've been able to do it continentally in this region, in Asia, and they've beaten some very good sides to do so. But the World Cup is that next step up, and you could see how much it meant to even qualify for the World Cup for these guys, right? So the chance to actually play there and perhaps be able to win some matches and really prove themselves at that level is going to be huge. So yeah, I'm really, really excited to see it, because as we've been saying, this is the future of the Socceroos side. So if they can start to get some good mentality going early, get some wins under their belt now, it's going to serve them so well moving forward. So yeah, super excited for it.
Absolutely. All right, let's bring it back to the A-League. It was a big weekend in terms of setting up the final kind of charge home in our season. Jacob, Auckland, Adelaide, it is in the very early days of this fixture, but in terms of absolute entertainment, just powerhouse games, we're 2 from 2, plenty of late drama in both. 2 extra time goals to finish 2-2 back in Adelaide. This one, the exact same to finish 4-4. Some long range goals, Guillermo May. We had, the kind of pack the house corner technique come out and prove effective as well. Lots of various goals. The penalties, of course, caused a bit of controversy. But these two teams, you look at the rivalries around the A-League, and Melbourne Victory, Adelaide, yes, there's history with the whole Victorian South Australian thing, but that's one of the core rivalries of the league that you can really say was born out of just the football and the contests that were played between the two teams. Yeah. Maybe there's potential for something else here between Auckland and Adelaide.
It definitely feels it, right? Yes, okay, it's only been 2 games. It happens to be a season where they're both doing really well. So, that adds to it. So whether or not it's something that continues on throughout the rest of the history of football in this country, who knows? But it's certainly promising signs that there's something building there, because, already just in the 2 games that have been played, a 2-2 draw and a 4-4 draw, controversy in both, refereeing decisions in both that coaches feel went against their team or weren't favourable to them, and lots of goals, late drama. It's got all the makings of you're spot on, Lockie, like a really good fixture in this league, and it does feel like something that hopefully if it can sort of be encouraged a little bit more to push the edge on this one a bit more, it's going to be great. I think something that helped as well was the sort of unconventional coach press conference that was held as well in the build up to the match, where they had both Steve Corica and Cole Viet standing next to each other, fielding questions from the New Zealand press and from some questions that had been sent in from Adelaide as well. And it added that unique angle to it, because anything you say about the opposition coach or the opposition, he's standing next to you, and it's like they addressed we're kind of friends, we've been in the football scene together for a long time, we've played together, we know each other really well, but it's all about the game on the park, and I think that we saw that come out in the players and the teams and the way that they both played, because while Auckland their whole thing has been to not concede goals, I thought that it was a pretty decent performance from them still, even though they conceded 4, right? This is a bit out of the norm for them, but they showed resilience to keep it as close as they could. It looked like it was destined to go to a 3-3 draw, and then it was Sakai, wasn't it, that got that 4th goal for them, and massive celebrations, and it looked like they'd done it again against Adelaide and gotten that late goal, and then Adelaide went up the pitch and did the same thing. It was just such an awesome battle to watch, and if this is what every game between these two teams is going to be like, this is potentially what the grand final could be in the A-League, right? If both teams continue on the way that they have gone, it's quite likely that this could be the matchup. And
Adelade's not making the final. Get out of here, Jacob.
Well, I'm just saying,
you've been so pessimistic about them, and now you're saying Adelaide's going to make the final.
I'm optimistic that we'll have a good grand final, and I think that a good grand final would be these two teams meeting up again. There we go. It would be if this did serve as a grand final preview, both fixtures, then we got some good games in store for us ahead.
Absolutely, Christian. Just if these teams happen to meet in a 2-legged semi-final or a grand final and had something like this kind of tension in a fixture, it's something that you then look to next season and say, let's put it round 1, let's make it the opener, let's make it a big thing, and things grow from there. It could be really, really exciting. 2 penalties in this game in particular. Steve Corica didn't reckon either of them should be given, but maybe we shouldn't, give too much credence to the opposition coach's opinion on these kind of things. But I think they're both naive challenges and soft, probably yes, but I think they're also penalties.
Yeah, you're right to use the term soft. At the same time, if I look at some of these decisions, you'd have to give it right. I mean, just because there's just a smidget of contact, it's still enough to bring down a play. And I think that's what sometimes we underestimate, right? It's like, oh, he slightly touched him. How is that a penalty? But with the actual force and the attacking players' movement going forward, it actually does impact him more than you think. So it is, I can see why Corica would say that. Obviously, he would say it, right, because it went against him. But yeah, I'd say it's soft. So the first one especially, I mean, I forgot the defender sticks his leg out, but he's clipped him, right? I mean, you can't blame the referee for giving that as a penalty, right? So
was it Pastrana?
Yes. I want to say it is.
I think so.
I believe it was.
Or was it Tommy Smith?
I think Tommy Smith was the second one. He didn't give away both, did he?
That's a bad outing for him if he did.
Yeah.
But
Anyway.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, the second one was just poorly timed. Like the ball was past him and he's gone for the tackle, and that's you've just got to not reward stupidity, right? I mean, that's a penalty. I'm sorry, but you know, it's untimely, it's unnecessary, and you got to understand that you're going to pay the consequences, right? If you don't time the challenge 100% correctly. So, yeah, for me, no complaints given. But I don't know if Jacob's got a different opinion. Probably does, being an Adelaide fan.
No, like I think that both penalties. The first one, you know, he's swiping for the ball and gets none of it and gets all of Alagic's leg. I think what doesn't help Alagic is that he just gets straight back up. And so it sort of doesn't look like...
the other thing with Alagic is that he manages to plant his foot in the ground before he then kind of lifts it up and falls over, right? He makes the most of it.
He does make the most of it, but you know, if you do want to get a penalty, sometimes you have to, right? You gotta make it obvious that there was contact there. And that's the thing that really kind of annoyed me a bit about Corica's comment on the second one. He said, oh yeah, but Mork was looking for the contact. I'm thinking, yeah, and everybody could see that. So if you know that he's looking for the contact, don't give him any to go down on, right? Like, you know, he's just driving, and it was clear that he was not going to be able to get a shot off on goal with how quick he was moving there. He was just going to run it straight out for a goal kick. Putting your foot in there, knowing that he's looking for that contact, is such a silly thing. Like you said, Christian, you're going to get punished for the mistakes that you make. So yeah, no complaints about them. I agree, you know, they're soft in the grand scheme of things, right? It's not like they're serious foul play or violent conduct or anything like that. Lord knows we've seen worse challenges this season not given as penalties, right? But it's still, you know, I think that they're the right decisions in the moment, and, you know, ignoring all the context around decisions that have been and haven't been made this season. If you just put this game in a vacuum, you've got to give those ones. And, you know, I think that the right decisions were made.
So we set this game up last week and said if Auckland win this, or at least my belief was, they've won the Premiership plate, essentially, right? Obviously, anything can happen, but in terms of their form and the games they have left to play, it would be pretty much wrapped up. Now, to let you into my personal experience watching this game, when Auckland went 2-0 up very early on, I tweeted out, I said, just like that, Auckland have won the Premiership. What an impact they've made in their season. And then, you know, Adelaide scored their first one back. And then did Auckland make it 3-1 or did it go to 2-2? I can't remember.
3-1.
I think it went
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
Yep.
Yeah, so 3-1, and then I'm feeling good again. And then, of course, Adelaide come back, and what happens. For the record, I still think they've done enough, because I think Adelaide needed to use this opportunity to close the gap as a 6-pointer. So personally, I think the Premier's play is Auckland still. It's an 8-point gap to Western United and Adelaide, and they have a game in hand specifically over Western. Then their final 8 games are the Mariners, Wanderers and Perth at home, and then the Jets, Roar, Sydney, Victory and Western Sydney away. So those last couple of away games may prove a little nervy if the points gap starts to close a little bit. So, we also know, Christian, that they had that run of games at home, so it makes sense that they're finishing the season away from it. Do you think they drop enough points in that run to make it interesting?
Nope. Title series. I reckon your ex post is basically, it's fine. I mean, I hope you didn't delete it, because I didn't. It's right. Because even like those last couple of games, those away fixtures, they'll probably have the league wrapped up, and they won't even have to worry about it. We've got, like you said, the game in hand over Adelaide. Western have played. No, sorry, they got the game in hand over Western, because Western have got 19, have played 19. Adelaide, Auckland on the same amount of games. So 8-point buffer there between Auckland and Adelaide. like I've said in previous weeks, Auckland for me is just too consistent, right? And you've got teams like Adelaide in that bunch who I just can't trust. I'm sorry, but I can't. And that goes to Western United as well. Melbourne Victory, same story. And from there, so for me, it's like, who else is going to top them? Like, no one shouts at me as they're going to really make this deep run and really challenge Auckland. Even if they did, I still think it's too late because Auckland have made up, so much ground to really get into the position that they're in. So, yeah, it's going to be very difficult to see a different winner. Could be proven wrong. It is the A-League, and yeah, as you said, Lockie, anything can happen in this crazy league. But yeah, Auckland have just been super consistent, really impressive, and it'd be a shame in a way if they did drop it because it's the story in itself, right? New club coming into the league, first season. We've seen the crowd numbers. We know they should secure a top 2 spot, so at least they are going to have at least a home final with that crowd behind them. We've seen the sellouts before this season, so that in itself will be a great advert for the competition. So yeah, I hope Auckland do end up winning the Premier's play and then hopefully making a grand final at home. It'll be great scenes.
Does it remind you of any other club in the A-League by any chance?
Yeah.
Of this exact same story almost. It's very reminiscent of the early days of the Wanderers. Great crowd, great community outreach, good football, getting good results. I know we all know what happened with the Wanderers when it came finals time. So, maybe the experience, right, of Corica is going to help them do what the Wanderers could in their early days.
Because Popovich didn't have a good record in A-League Grand Finals. I know that would have been like his first, second, third, etc.
He lost 5, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, when he was at the Wanderers, those were his first couple, right? When he made those Grand Finals, then he was at, I think he lost one at Perth Glory as well. So, yeah, I think Corica's experience definitely will give him a bit of an edge. But at the same time, the players have to do it on the pitch, yeah. It's no use saying, Corica's got all this experience. Like, the players themselves have to do it as well on the pitch. But from this season alone, what we've seen, they're more than capable of doing it for sure.
Yeah. And it's the other factor is even if they do drop a few of those games, it's like that middle pack have been taking points off each other all season. So you're really going to pick one team. Honestly, I'd say the most likely is probably the Wanderers, and they're in an unfortunate position of also being behind.
Didn't I tip them to come first? Come on, let's go Wanderers. Come on.
But we'll get to them in a little while. But they're the ones who actually feel like they could streak all the way through if they, had the fortune on their side. But it's just going to be so hard for one specific team in that group to pull a run together. So it looks like we're calling it. Are we, Jacob? I think you're the final vote.
I think so. I think eight points is just too much to overcome at this point in the season.
Yeah.
Especially with the games that Auckland do have coming up, where there's a couple. Sydney, Victory, Western could all prove a bit of a difficult one. Wanderers maybe, but it's at home for Auckland. But the others, you look at Jets, the Raw, Perth, they should be getting the job done there. And then you've got the question of, like you raised, Lockie, even if they do drop points, are Adelaide going to go and take advantage of that? Probably not, because they haven't done the rest of the season, right? When Auckland have dropped points, Adelaide have dropped points. That's why the gap is still at 8 points. So, yeah, it just seems like it's too much to overcome now at this point. And going to what Christian said, it's all about consistency, right? Auckland have just managed to get the job done in more games than they've not got the job done, right? And it's about playing good football, solid defensive football, not conceding, and then when they do concede, making sure that they're able to minimise the damage and come away with a point. So yeah, I mean, you can't begrudge them because they've done a fantastic job of putting a good squad together, of playing good football and getting those results. But it's a little bit disappointing that at the midpoint of the season we were all sort of hyping up the potential for this title fight, and in just a few weeks it's sort of slipped away because of a poor run of form for the teams that are chasing them. But that's football, and Auckland have been the best side by far this season. So yeah, while mathematically others are still in with a chance, I don't think realistically they are.
So
but
what's the magic number then? What's the magic number for Auckland to get? What are we saying? How many points until they wrap
good
up
point.
the title?
So what are we? There are 8 games left. 15 feels like too much. They're probably not going to catch. I reckon maybe 51, 52.
I'm trying to think
anyone's going to beat that.
What's usually the benchmark for? Let's look at last season. So
well, it's hard because there's been different amount of games played. And
I'm just talking about the last couple. Central Coast finished on 55, 27 games played, 26 game season.
Yeah.
Melbourne City 55 points. So that's usually roughly around that sort of number, which would guarantee.
And that would have been more
top
competitive
spot.
up the top. So maybe it's
Yeah.
less than
Yeah.
that for Auckland.
Yeah. So maybe, 3-4 wins, 9 to 12 points.
Yeah, maybe it's like 47, 48 in
Yeah.
terms of beating second place. Yeah, crazy. But even though the Premiership race may be decided, the battle for the Asian Champions League elite spot is alive and well. Western United currently holding that position at the moment. Of course, that is the one part of the Western Sydney Wanderers story that Auckland will not be able to compete with, no matter how hard they try. Another team who are going to have to go on a little bit of a good run of form if they want to compete for the championship at all is Sydney FC. They're currently sitting outside the six, but I thought a much improved performance from them on the weekend against the Bulls in their lovely pink kit. I thought Sydney, you had Joe Lolly, Douglas Costa, Patrick Lamala all firing. I thought it's pretty much back towards their best. I think Philip Curto was a large reason, Christian, why this didn't get out of hand earlier. I thought the Blues were very, very impressive. If it wasn't for Curto, I think they could have put a few more away.
Yeah, Curto, I mean, even last season, he was saving MacArthur's skin, wasn't he, for a few games, even back to the Australia Cup final, where basically handed the trophy to MacArthur. He was sensational in that game, and you've seen, a few performances like that also this season. So, nothing out of the ordinary for him, for his standards. But, I thought Sydney really impressed me in this game. Douglas Costa, in particular, I think, one of the big question marks for me in these past couple of weeks in this sort of small window was the Asia travel, right? Between those couple of games that they played in the ACL too. Would that impact them in terms of travel-wise and fitness? Because they have been ravaged by injury, right, during this season, and we tipped them to be sort of a lock for at least top two. We thought, this team's going to be unstoppable given their performances in Asia before the season started. But then those injuries started to come, and then Ufuk Talay was starting to rejiggle his team, reorganise the pieces within his formation to try and get the best setup. But I think, Douglas Costa's been good when he has played, but I think Patrick Lamala has really stood up in these big moments. And we've seen Sydney in terms of in that number 9 position. It's been on and off, right, with some of the signings they've made. Sometimes they're a bit of a hit and a miss, but for Klimala, he's been sensational this season. You can rely on him. Clinical goal scorer, knows when to get into the right space at the right times. Just a great link-up player in general. So, I think for Sydney, if they can slowly build this momentum, they could be building towards something come finals if they happen to make it. But I thought, on the contrary, we know MacArthur struggles at the same time, with all the departures in January. I feel sorry for Milej Stadovski because, I think Valerie Germain's departure really just rubs salt in the wounds, right? It's like, what more can they do? What more can Stadovski get out of this squad, right? So, disappointing from that front. I thought they could have put up a better fight, but at the same time, it's expected, right, given how the season's panned out for them. But Sydney can only play who's in front of them, right? And I thought there was some real good passage of play in there from Sydney. And, like I said, if they can sort of gel everything together, because it's been in parts, it's like, they've had good passages of play here, they've got good spells, good possession, and they can't mould it all together for 90 minutes, whereas in Asia, I think they've done it more so compared to in the A-League, which is kind of weird. So, still a couple of question marks, but I think they do have the talent and the depth to really get on a good roll.
And you know what I love about, Sydney in this Asian campaign as well is as a football club, they're taking it very seriously, which is a very encouraging thing to see. They're already in Korea as of Monday afternoon is my understanding. So they've got a good couple of days to, get ready until Thursday night for their first leg of their quarterfinal against Jeonbuk in South Korea. It's a massive game. It's the first time they've qualified past the first knockout phase of an Asian competition, and they have a chance to go really deep here. Their opposition, Jacob, are going to be difficult to gauge. They beat Thailand's Port FC 5-0 on aggregate in the round of 16. They've got 4 points from their first 3 games in the new K1 season. That's after only just surviving in the league last season in a relegation playoff. So they're a team that's been up and down since, the season where they qualified for this competition, the one beforehand. It's a bit of a roller coaster ride. And as is always with Asia, you never quite really know what you're going to get. But you've got Douglas Costa, who played 85 minutes on the weekend. He looks fit and ready to go. All your big players are pretty much firing. they're in a good spot here, Sydney FC.
Yeah, and on Douglas Costa, what a game he had against MacArthur. Like it was like at times single-handedly the game was Costa against Curto. It was really entertaining to watch the two of them sort of do battle, and yeah, just really such a quality player. And you can see the difference he makes to that team when he's on and he's fit and he's firing, and just how dynamic he is in attack. It's awesome to watch. So yeah, the fact that he's getting more and more minutes into his legs now, hopefully can stave off injury a little while longer, because this game is going to be huge. And you mentioned sort of one of the vagaries of Champions League football around the world is, of course, you qualify for it the season before, so there's no guarantee that you're going to be any good the next season, which obviously we've seen with the Mariners, right? Like they kind of struggled quite heavily this year, but Jean-Buck, despite their struggles, domestically, they're still through to the quarterfinal here, and it's not going to be easy for Sydney, that's for sure. But they're coming into it double legger, which helps out again, because if you're not quite at your best in the first one, you've still got a chance to go again in the next. And is the first one the away fixture as well?
It is, yeah, they're in Korea. Yep.
So honestly, some teams prefer going away for the first leg and having the home leg be the second one. Some teams prefer to start off strong on the right foot, but I think from what we saw from Sydney in their previous outing was that perhaps having that second fixture being the home one might actually be a big boost for them, because they were a bit lackluster in the first game and then they had a difficult away trip, whereas here they're going to have that chance to bring it home strong. So no, it's going to be awesome football to watch. I really hope Sydney get it over the line, because I'm not a Sydney FC supporter or anything like that, but for the good of Australian football, for the coefficient, but also because there's a real chance that this team could go on and win this competition if they can just keep putting together performances. They keep just getting over these little hurdles. Jean-Buck's next. Just got to do your job. It's 2 games of football. You get a positive result and you go through to the semi-final, and then you're a game away from the final, and then you're a game away from winning it all. Like it's just, you break it down piece by piece. They're not far off it, and they've got the squad, the players, and the style of football, I think, to get them there. So I'm really hoping that they can do it, because it's going to be nice to see Australian teams performing well in Asia in back-to-back years, because not only is it rare for Australian teams to perform well in Asia full stop, but in back-to-back years I don't think it's ever happened, right? I mean, it was Wanderers 2016 and Adelaide in 2008 as really the two that you can earmark as before this, and now it's the Mariners and potentially Sydney in back-to-back years. So that would do a huge deal of good for proving that Australia has a spot in these competitions and can do a good job and win it. So yeah, I'm really hoping that they can get the job done. But like I said, either way, I think it's going to be fantastic football. 2 really good sides up against each other. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
And Christian, if they do get through this tie and make it through to the semi-finals, which will of course essentially be the final of the East Zone, they are very likely to come back up against Sanfrecce Hiroshima, who they lost to twice in the group stage, but very competitive matches, it must be said. But they, of course, have a new addition in recent days. Valère Germain has joined their squad at the beginning of the new J1 season, partnering up with former Melbourne City marquee player as well, Tolgay Arslan. They're loving these A-League marquees at the moment, Sanfrecce.
It's not about that. It's about whether Germain loves the refereeing over there in Japan better. Otherwise, he'll be tearing up his contract after a couple of games, saying, "Nope, that's enough for me." But would it be funny if Sanfrecce and Sydney pair up against each other in that East final, and Germain somehow just scores the winner, and that would just that'd be the worst. So
Germain gets sent off.
See it happen.
We didn't get to see Arslan. He didn't actually play in the games against Sydney as well, so we never got that opportunity either.
Yeah. Do you know how he's tracking over there, by the way, in Japan?
I think he's doing all right.
Has he been injured for a bit? Or
I'm pretty sure those games they were just being arrested, but I think he's doing all right, yeah.
Doing all right. Yeah, not surprised considering his season last year for City, because, class player, I think. Yeah, especially in that fixture when it was in Japan, I thought Sydney actually held their own. It was a pretty competitive game. And is the final over 1 or 2 legs?
The final is 1 leg. And I'm pretty sure, I should have looked this up when we talked about it the other week, but I'm pretty sure it's hosted by the team from the East this year. So I believe Sydney FC would get to host it.
I remember you saying that actually when this tournament started. So yeah, that does make sense. So again, another advantage for Sydney. So, yeah, I definitely share Jacob's optimism. I know he makes it sound easier than what it is, but at the same time, when you break it
game
down...
by game, Christian. Game by game.
game by game methods, I think, yeah, hopefully, we pray Sydney get over the line, because it's a number of factors, right? It's prize money now. Australian clubs more incentivized to really take this competition seriously for finances, considering, the financial disparity in the A-League, with that deal cut in the off-season, which was a shame. And then obviously you've got the coefficient as well. Not that the clubs should care, but they don't care as much as the fans, do they? I mean, in terms of the players, right? The clubs care, but do the players care? I think the players should care as well, because especially for those players, seeking to stay at their clubs long term, the Asian competition is a great, platform to showcase, your ability, at different tournaments. Like in Europe is like, who doesn't want to play in the Champions League? Like, that's the highest sort of tournament in Europe, and that's should be how the Asian Champions League should be viewed, in this continent here. Same with the ACL too. So, yeah, hopefully, all in all, Sydney find a way, game by game, try and get over the line, because I think they do have the talent. I just think my only concern is the travel aspect. But so far, I think they've proven that they've been able to rotate with the bench. They've been able to swap a few pieces, and if they continue that, then they've got a good chance.
So Tolgai has started every game this season so far, except for the second leg against Namdin when they were already 3-0 up, and he played just 20 minutes on the weekend as well. So a little bit of a rest for the legs before the big quarterfinal appearance. They unleash him. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to bring it back to the A-League. We talked about Philip Curto and the game he had. I think there was a few moments of redemption for keepers in the weekend on the A-League. Obviously, Curto, they're never going to replace him at the Bulls, but he has had a moment or two this year where he's coughed up some interesting goals that we haven't seen from him in the past. Another really good example is Patrick Beach. That save that he made to keep out Corbin Piper midway through the second half against the Phoenix was world class. That's like what a save Gordon Banks kind of areas we're getting into, right? That kind of header away to his right. That was exceptional. And, for all the times this season that he's made mistakes, because there have been a few, the ball through the palms against Auckland, the Ryan T goal in the first derby, right? There's been moments where Aurelio Vidmar could have easily sent him to the bench, but he came out and said we made a decision to stick by him. And this is the payoff right here. It was as important as the winning goal was down the other end to Melbourne City in this game. So it's congratulations to him. And then obviously people like Matt Sutton, who's been playing tremendously all season, Lawrence Thomas as well, just keepers that have really been rewarded, Jacob. So I think we've seen a few struggle, and, we're still not immune to that. Ethan Cox probably didn't have his best day in the Auckland game. But it is good to see, players like Patrick Beach really kind of settling in after being backed through with their coach like this.
Yeah, and I think that shows good coaching as much as anything else, right? Because if you're sort of in and out and you're swapping your goalkeepers after mistakes and things like that, it's showing those players that you don't really rate them that much anyway, that you can just chop and change and feel like it's not going to affect things too much. But B, it doesn't give them a chance to redeem themselves, right? If they make a mistake and it costs your team a game, and you cut them and you bring in the bench goalkeeper for the next game or whatever, you're not giving them a chance to go, hang on, no, I wasn't at my best. This is what I can actually do. And it's something that Vidmar's been able to do with Beach this season. And, like you said, there's been quite a few errors, but, when he's then had a good game, it's paid off in spades. It's kept them in it, and he's pulled off these fantastic saves. So, yeah, I think it's the mark of a good coach. It's somebody that can identify the player that they want, and be able to back them and give them that confidence to be able to perform at the level that they expected them to be able to perform at, right? It's something that, Vidmar has done with Beach, but, on the other hand, you've also got to cut your losses sometimes when you do give that faith to a player and they don't necessarily repay it with their performances, and it's continually a problem, like with Josh Oluwayemi at the Phoenix, right? Where it was clear Taliano was like, I'm going to give you every single chance I can give you until we cannot justify it any longer. And it's like, well, it reached that point, right? And, that's also the sign of a good coach, is knowing when to cut the player off and knowing when to back them. So, yeah, I think Vidmar's done a fantastic job there with Beach. But then, all the keepers that are able to now be able to put in these performances and right wrongs. And you mentioned Matt Sutton, who I think has been probably goalkeeper of the season. Unless you can give it jointly to the victory keepers, but I'm not sure if that would fly. But yeah, no, he's been a fantastic player for Western. Lawrence Thomas for the Wanderers, ever reliable as well. But yeah, Patrick Beach in particular, the one to really get that sort of redemption story and redemption arc. I think that's awesome, and it goes to show that showing confidence and backing younger players, unproven players, it's going to pay off if you can do it right, and it's something that they've managed to do right there. So no, it's awesome to see. Watch him now go and have a howler on the weekend, but
just the right time to bring it up. Christian, the Western Sydney Wanderers, last week we kind of said that they're putting a little bit of consistency together, something that not a lot of teams in that middle pack have been able to do in the last few months, and they've come from the bottom of that pack and shot their way through. They really doubled down on that this week. A really convincing victory against Perth Glory. A Perth side that aren't the same as what they used to be as well in terms of the quality of their side at the start of the season. The Wanderers are looking at 13 points from an available 15 in their last 5 games. And again, if you look at that table, it looks like they're kind of finding their way in that pack. But from the perspective of where the Wanderers were like a month and a half ago, they're on a rise, right? And there's nothing really to say that they should be slowing down now. Why should they not just be continuing up towards that top 2?
This is why I tipped them to come first, because I saw this potential in them. It's come too little too late. The start of the season, we had this discussion, are they even going to make finals? Because they were languishing in that 8th to 10th sort of spot on the table. And things just weren't clicking right. You had that whole One Mata situation where it was just an absolute circus with Ben Kalfala coming out in that podcast. I think it was, who was it? Which podcast was it?
It was Off Air.
Off Air, yeah.
Off Air. And yeah, that sort of, it was a bit disheartening, because Alan Statch is probably thinking to himself, okay, I probably don't have the trust, right? Because you've got to understand that he's got to think he knows what he's doing, right? Surely he saw Mata in training thinking, okay, he's probably not match fit or he doesn't fit the system. But I think as time has passed on, he's sort of realised and understood that, okay, there is a place for him in the team, albeit not, playing 90 minutes every single week. But I think it still does have a crucial role in it, and albeit not starting, obviously week in, week out, which is perfectly fine, or it should be, it seems, not according to Fahid Ben Khalfala, but that's for another story for another day. But I just think, these past few games have shown the real sort of defensive unity that we've all been crying out for, right? The mistakes they made at the start of the season were just schoolboy amateurish. And you think back to an example, one of those games against Adelaide when the Wanderers were playing at home, just the mistakes in that game were just endless, right? And it was just leaks everywhere, holes at the back. And I think they're just starting to shore up that side of the game, because we know they've got the talent going forward, right? I think Zach Sassford has really come into his own this season. It's not just the Sydney derbies that he's performing. He's actually he's showing it in other games as well. Brandon Borello, we know his experience. I think Criev coming over from Wellington adds another dimension out wide as well. Josh Belente, another experienced player. So they've got players all around the field. It's just at the back defensively has been the issue once Marcelo left in the off-season. It's like, have they replaced him properly? Probably still question marks around that fully in terms of judging the whole season. But look, I'm looking at the run now. I mean, they do have a tough few games coming up. Who they got? They got victory next at home: Wellington, Auckland, Western United, Melbourne City, Newcastle Jets, and Macarthur. So you expect at least probably 3-4 wins out of those fixtures, and that probably might be enough to see them in finals. But I think based on the football that they are producing, because we mentioned before, right, these teams in the middle pack, they're dropping points for fun, right? And it seems like the Wanderers don't want to be that side. They want to say, okay, we've got some spaces opening up on the table. We want to exploit it and take advantage of it. So I think their football is showing signs of progression. I think Statch is slowly starting to imprint his identity into the side. And I think it could be enough to make finals and really, sort of make a deep run, hopefully, because we saw, I think it was last season, the season before, where Marco Rudan, another circus in itself, where I think they made the first round of finals and they started to build some real momentum into that final series, and it all just fell apart, right? So hopefully it's not the same scenario here for the Wanderers, but they are playing some good stuff. So yeah, let's see if they can keep it up.
So yeah, the next 2 games they have to play Melbourne Victory and then Wellington as well. So you'd think on the face of it, honestly, 2 games they probably could win, Jacob, because Melbourne Victory really seemed to have fallen off in recent weeks. This performance against the Raw was very poor in my opinion. They were extremely lucky to just have snagged away from the team that has won 1 game all season, right? You know, the Raw really should have seen them off in half an hour. That's how many chances they had. I think the defensive pairing of Roderick Miranda and Brandon Hamill have really been exposed over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. Miranda himself was particularly poor in that derby. They both caught out frequently in this game against Brisbane. The amount of times that Amanatides found himself in behind or in a scoring position, don't know how we didn't put any of them away or create an assist. Had a horrible time and then got injured as well, so not a great day for him. But for Victory overall, Brisbane Roar are just not a team you should be dropping points to at this point in the season when it is so tight and every game matters so much.
Brisbane's not a team you should be dropping points to at any point this season, to be honest. I mean, it's one of the worst performing A-League sides in recent memory. But you're spot on there that I think it's that defensive pairing of Miranda and Hamill. And it's weird, right? Because on the surface of it, you look at those 2 players individually and you go, you know, okay, maybe Miranda's, you know, he's got that game or 2 in him where he's going to, you know, get himself a silly red card or give away a penalty or give away a goal or something like that. But for the most part, he's been a pretty decent servant for the Victory. Solid, relatively reliable centre-back. And Brendan Hamill, obviously, with a lot of experience. You'd expect him to be able to slot in and sort of be a plug-and-play player. But then when they're playing together, it's like almost like neither of them have played as defenders before in their lives sometimes, you know, with what's going on. Their positioning is all out of whack, you know, and this is like positioning early in build up for the opposition team as well. If you take a quick look at them, you know, if you get the chance the next time the Victory are playing, but when the opposition team are in the early phases of their build up, even then it's like they're not quite sure where exactly they should be, if they should be marking yet, if it should just be space holding, what's going on, you know. It seems like there's a little bit of confusion. So maybe it's the players, maybe it's the system, but you know, given how bad it's been in recent games, it's hard to say that it's the system unless something's fundamentally changed at the Victory. So yeah, it's a bit of a surprise because, like I said, on paper you look at those 2 and you think that's a pretty solid defensive pairing, but they've been anything but. And one of the big things that stuck out to me outside of their positioning was the players finding their way in behind them, and that's typically indicative of a team playing with a too high a defensive line for the players that they have in their defence. And I think that might be the case for the Victory here as well, is that they're just trying to creep that line ever forwards to gain control over areas of the pitch. But what they're doing then is obviously sacrificing a lot of space in behind that Hamill and Miranda aren't able to actually catch up and cover. So, you know, that doesn't help them either. And Brisbane were able to identify that and kind of exploit it, right? You mentioned Amanatides couldn't actually put anything on the end of it once he got in those positions, but he was getting in those positions. And I think that for some of the teams that they'll be coming up against, we mentioned the Wanderers, they've got players who know how to put the ball in the back of the net and create goal-scoring chances. So I think that they'll be eyeing this up and going, hold on, we could be in for a big scoring game here, because, you know, when you've got quick, dynamic players on the pitch, your Nicholas Milanovic, your Božidar Krajev, your Zach Sapsfords, it's going to open the game up, and you know that all 3 of those guys can put the ball in the back of the net, or they can lay it off for somebody else. I think the Victory could really struggle. So, you know, it's crazy, right? Because the Victory only a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about now they're starting to chase down Adelaide and Auckland. Maybe they're going to be in the title fight, right? And then it's, you know, some poor defensive performances, what looks like a breakdown in the defensive system that they have. And all of a sudden we're talking about, you know, are they good enough to make top 4? Are they going to make finals? It's so flimsy, the league this season, and it's just these little things where if you can't get it right, or you can't get it consistently good enough, which is I think the case for most teams this year, you're going to suffer. And for Victory, it's just happening at just the wrong time in the season, right? When things are getting really tight and really tense, as you're in the build up and trying to fight for finals. It's the worst possible time to be dropping points, because you can't make it up, right? There's fewer and fewer games to be able to claw those points back. So they need to figure out what the underlying issue here is, quick, smart, whether it is change players completely, right? Give somebody else a shot in the back line and see how that goes. If it's changed the way that you set your defense up, I'm not quite sure, but something needs to happen, because Victory, they were looking like a very good side for a little while, and now it's starting to fall apart again. So yeah, if they want to really compete, they need to fix whatever those problems are. And then for Brisbane, you've got to you've got to take these opportunities when they're offered to you. As a team like Brisbane, having a season like they're having, where you're not having a lot of success, you're given a game where, like you said, Lockie, in the first 30 minutes they should have put them to bed, but they didn't. And you know, I think maybe that's why Brisbane are bottom of the table, is that they've not been able to take those opportunities. So, you know, a bit indicative of their season. And for Victory, like I said, fix those problems, because when they've got it right, they're a good team.
I think, Christian, when I look at this top seven, and I do think it is a top seven now that is competing for these final spots, I see Auckland obviously miles away, Western United, Wanderers, City and Sydney. It feels like those teams are trending upwards. But then you look at probably Adelaide United, who do have a little bit more of a buffer, and Melbourne Victory are probably the two teams that are trending downwards in this pack.
Are you suggesting that Victory are going to drop out of the 6?
I'm suggesting it's at this point in time, after round 21, they look the most likely to me.
I'm just having a quick look at the table now. Where are we? 30 points, so 6th. Yeah, I mean, based on current form, you're probably right, because from the 8th position down, I don't see MacArthur in their current state making it. And I actually see Sydney jumping in that top 6. I think they've just got too much quality not to make it. I think it'd be a disaster for them not to reach finals. So, yeah, based on form, you've got to say Victory and no one else, really. I think Adelaide, they've gained enough momentum and points to, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I don't see them slipping out. I think there is more in Adelaide. They won't slip out. For me, it's either out of Victory or City. And, you know, take the Wanderers as well, just been touching on their good form. And they've got Victory up next, right? So that's another crucial sort of mid of the table pack matchup. So if the Wanderers win that one, obviously extends their lead out to 4 points over Victory, and then it becomes really messy if you're a Victory fan. So, yeah, beware of Sydney FC, that's all I'm saying, because I surely expect them to make finals, whether they go deep in Asia or not.
Yeah. Well, I'm eyeing up potentially that original rivalry clash on the 29th of March as being a big game for both sides, for both Adelaide and Victory, because that could potentially determine which of those two sides does stay in the 6 if their current form persists as it is at the moment, right? Because you're getting if it's the Victory that win it, you're getting almost a 6-pointer over Adelaide. If it's Adelaide that win it, they almost certainly kick Victory to the curb and out of the 6. So for me, that's where my eye was immediately drawn, was these two teams are on a downward turn, and it's going to culminate in them meeting up at the end of the month in what could be an absolutely huge game for finals ramifications. Yeah,
it's going to be massive. So the Wanderers have that bye before they take on the Victory. Victory themselves do have an opportunity to set things right against the Mariners this weekend at home. So that's the opportunity.
Victory's problem as well, it's the away form. I think they've accumulated 12 points in a possible 30 this season. Like, if you want to be cementing your place in the top 6, you've got to be better, right? Again, dropping points to Brisbane, lost 3-0 to Newcastle a couple of weeks ago, and their away fixtures, they've got 3 out of the 7. So away to the Wanderers, away to Wellington, we know that's a tough place for them to go, and then away to MacArthur, also a tough away trip. So, and then you look at the home fixtures, they've got Auckland as one of them. That's not going to be easy. Original rivalries, Jacob touched on, then the Mariners and the Jets. There's not many windows opportunities to pick up points. So you are right, Lockie. It's going to be, a bit of a stretch from this point to see him making it.
Interesting to follow. All right. Well, we brought up MacArthur a little bit there. Again, to be honest, I think their season is over. I just think their personnel losses have been too much. Yeah. But looking a little bit further forward, some interesting news coming out on Monday that the current federal opposition are committing $7.5 million if they are to be elected in the federal election this year towards what the Bulls are saying, Jacob, would be the best football facility in the country. I guess it's coming around to that time of year where these kind of promises are being made.
Yeah, it's just typical Polly speak. I'm not taking anything that was said there as gospel. It's classic campaign. Let's rally the people behind us, and then it never actually happens sort of thing.
Oh, I don't know if it never actually happens. I feel like the basis of these kind of, committals of funds are based on a track record of doing it in the past.
Yeah, but also it's like, a government investing in football is such a foreign idea to Australia that it seems incredibly unlikely.
We started off with such a positive tone this show.
I was about to say pessimistic, Jacob. At it again. Come on.
Yeah, why did I ask him that question?
But I mean, look, if it is true, it's kind of cool, right? Because the Bulls are one of those teams where when they came into the competition, right, of them and Western, everyone sort of earmarked them as being, well, they're going to be the ones that will settle in. They'll be the ones that will be all right. It's almost sort of, it's flipped and it's gone the other way, where Western found early success. They've sort of, despite having no identity for a while, kind of found an identity. They've got their own stadium. They play on land they own, whereas MacArthur aren't paying anything in rent, but are charging crazy ticket prices, have had fallings out with coaches, players and fans. Like it's almost like they were set up to be the easy hit and they just fell apart. So, it would be really good for them to sort of solidify themselves a little bit and give themselves a bit of something to look forward to. And, that being said, and we're not a political podcast, but you should not base who you vote on solely on their promise to invest in football. Do a bit more research than that. But this is certainly a nice tempter if you were already looking that way.
Yeah, sweetens the deal for sure. One last interesting game of Guess Who for you, Christian. The OFC Professional League, we've talked about this a little bit before. This is a new FIFA-endorsed competition launching in Oceania, set to kick off in 2026. Confirmed on Monday that 4 Australian clubs had submitted expressions of interest to participate in the competition. Who do you think those clubs may be?
I've got no clue, to be honest. Can you enlighten us as to...
No, I don't know. It's not public.
There've got to be 4 NST sides, right? So championship sides. South Melbourne will be one for sure.
But,
I don't know. Will they? If they're going into the championship, why do they need the OFC Professional League?
Well, they were Oceanic Club of the century or whatever, right? So it's they've got something to prove there on that stage.
When they build a pyramid and they're technically connected to the A-League, does that mean that they're not an Oceanic club anymore, though?
Yeah. Where does
their club license will be in Asia, right?
It would be, yeah.
Fascinating.
I mean,
anyway,
yeah, South Melbourne would probably feel like they should be given an invitation. Given
it's got to be South Melbourne.
What Jacob said,
they've got to be one of them.
Yeah, I can't see them not competing in it. And then you've got a few clubs also in the championship. But do you think, Lockie, that if you're in the championship, that those clubs won't take part in it?
No, I don't think so. I think even what the championship is at the moment, I think people are really overestimating what the kind of opportunity of this OFC Professional League is. It's great for the island nations and the Pacific countries to form a professional league. They're going to get a lot of money from FIFA to do it and enhance football in those regions. I think for Australian teams, it might be a place for some of those neglected clubs in terms of the championship scene. Maybe if they're a few tiers down and don't have the quite instant ability to compete in the championship, I think that's the kind of vibe that we're looking for this competition. I just don't see.
So maybe look at some of those sides that were rejected then in that first stage of clubs, and they might be the ones.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be far off, at least with a couple in there. But that's interesting. A few Kiwi clubs as well, of course. For someone like an Auckland City that have dominated New Zealand football and even the Oceanic Champions League, that would probably be a club that would be very interested in what's happening and enhancing their reputation in that way. But yes, another wait and sit on that one on that front. But that will do for this episode of the Roundball Australia podcast. We'll leave this one there. Jacob Stevens, congratulations. 100 episodes on the podcast. Well done.
I've got just give me a second.
Give you a second. Okay. Oh, he's turned his camera off, Christian. What's going to happen?
It's dramatic. Is it going to be another raising the bat, or is he going for a different celebration?
I reckon he's got a cricket helmet that he's just about to put on.
Oh, good shout.
He wouldn't want to sit in that thing for the whole episode, would he?
Being the Englishman he is, wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah.
Taking your
that
wallet.
would be funny.
There you go.
Oh,
he's got the gloves.
Okay, the proper bat. The probably was. There's the
And
helmet.
the
Yeah, well done. He's just
Did you
hit
just
his
hit your
head.
fan?
He's hit the ceiling fan. He's hit the ceiling fan with the bat.
I hope you can
That's
edit
the
that
worst
out.
thing I've ever done in my life.
Well done. Oh. You got to question the commitment, though, not to be wearing the gloves the entire time, right, Christian? Because then he could have just gone straight up with it.
Oh, he would have given it away, though. It was saying when he did the bat raise the first time, he had the bat, I think, underneath him or beside him. He was like, he was going to give it away. So, fair play to him, though. Just the fan misses, that ruined it. That ruined the celebration.
I immediately regret my decision.
All right, well, let us know how much the bill is. You can put that down as an expense, can't we?
Next episode, it will fall down on top of me.
Yeah, great. 101 special. Lovely. You got a Dalmatian in store for the next episode. Just around.
Yeah, 101. Yeah,
All right.
nice.
I love it. Well done. Thank you all very much for listening at home. We appreciate your company as always. Big game for Sydney FC this week in the AFC Champions League 2. That game late on Thursday night. We'll see you Friday morning for a review of that one and all the comings and goings of Australian football. We appreciate your company again. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.